me ask our panelists to come in because I'd like them to take part in this online, in this flash poll that we're going to do. So let's see if we can bring in our two panelists and put up the poll. Out of home, obviously, among all of the channels, was the one that naturally took the greatest hit in the last year, and raises some of the biggest questions about how and in what forms it's actually going to come back. The question that we have for today of all of you, before we go into this panel, is what do you see as the biggest driver of out-of-home growth in 2021 and beyond? And our possibles are return to near pre-COVID traffic patterns, so that will be the key driver. Proliferation of new screens and more screens replacing static units. Improved tech and data driving audience and attribution capabilities. So take a couple of seconds to answer that. I know that in out-of-home, the question is not only going to be traffic coming back, but also the density within the places that traffic is coming back, and whether you're even going to be able to use previous sets of metrics and expectations for some of these places. But let me bring in our panelists because I'd like to ask them this, pose this question to them. I see Jill from Horizon is here.
Hi.
Hi, Jill.
How are you?
Do you want to turn your camera on?
I am. Oh, it is on.
It is on.
So I may be having a glitch.
And there's Marc Bartholomew from dentsu. Marc, how you doing?
Are you? Good, and you?
All right. Good to see you and good to meet you. Jill, we'll take you by voice. We'll take you any way we can. Obviously, we're up against the snowstorms. We already lost our moderator to a power out. If Michael Lieberman from Kinetic is able to come back in, I'll pop him in and have him replace me. Anyway, so this was our question. What do you see as the biggest driver of out-of-home growth in 2021? Possible answers being return to near pre-COVID traffic patterns, proliferation of new screens and more screens replacing static units, or improved tech and data driving audience and attribution capabilities. Let's see how you guys react to it. Marc, what do you think of that?
I think it's probably going to be a mix of the three, to be honest. And I don't want to be that guy who answers with a really broad answer. I think if I could lean to any of them, it would be the emergence and the evolution of tech and data. I think, returning to COVID levels or pre-COVID levels is important, but COVID has really accelerated a lot of positive change in the industry. We've got so much data available to us now, updated geopath figures from pre-COVID levels, that actually we're using that to negotiate better deals and cancellation terms. So whilst that's important, I do think that tech and data is going to play a huge role in what out-of-home is going to become. Programmatic is still relatively small in terms of, the overall piece of out-of-home spend, but you're seeing a lot more clients need that security that programmatic delivers, that maybe traditional out-of-home or historical out-of-home has not been able to. So I would go with tech and data on that one, and I can pass Jill for her answer.
Jill, actually, let's end the poll to see what everybody else thinks. And clearly, most seem to agree that it's tech and data driving audience and attribution capabilities. Jill, what do you think?
I thought it was I agree with Marc in that it's a combination of all three elements. The return to near pre-COVID traffic patterns. I think we're going to have a different type of a forecast. We're at 90% of pre-COVID levels now, but I know a lot of people made decisions about temporary moves and permanent moves, and there are a lot of people working from home for the foreseeable future. So I think it's, that's one important impact. There is a lot of investment going on with the proliferation of new screens and upgrading static inventory to digital inventory, but data has really been a game changer. And so I think the improved tech and data driving audience and attribution for sure is the big winner.
And I want to come back to that point about data in a second, but let's back up and have both of you please introduce yourselves a little bit and where you are in terms of the sorts of clients and work that you're doing to introduce yourselves. Marc, go ahead.
Yeah, so my name's Marc Bartholomew. I work at Dentsu on the out-of-home team. I currently service a number of our agency groups and also our direct clients. And I also lead the programmatic charge here as well. So about 18 months ago, I was put in charge of programmatic, knowing nothing about the topic, and now found myself, leading that charge. So hence why I probably had quite a biased answer to that first question.
Is there much, by the way, is there much overlap as of now between programmatic and out of home? Are we seeing that much, if at all, activity when it comes to programmatic out of home?
Yeah, it's still relatively small, to be perfectly honest. I think single digits in terms of a percentage, but we did see that grow, particularly in Q4 of last year, and already in 2021, the interest and the engagement with programmatic out of home has shot through the roof. It's really, and like I said, it goes back to clients wanting a bit more security for their advertising dollars and being able to pivot in a moment's notice, just to adapt to the market and the changes that are going on. So a lot more interest, certainly from Q4 onwards.
And I'm just going to ask Jill to follow up and introduce herself. And then I see that Michael is here. He got the powers back on. Hi, Michael. But Jill, introduce yourself, and then I'm just going to toss it to Michael to carry on. Jill, go ahead. Oh. I guess Jill's not hearing us. Michael, do you want to? Jill, are you back with us? Michael, go ahead. I'm gonna pop off and let you take it. I know that Jill's having some technical issues.
Fair enough. See, this is last panel of the day stuff. This is the kind of fun we all have. Apologies for that, everybody. Power blew, but everything's back on, so we'll get going. Thank you, Stephen, for filling in. Marc, good to see you. Jill, hopefully we will see you soon. I apologize to everyone. I'm gonna possibly backtrack over something that you just covered, but I will try not to. So Marc, keep me honest. All right, we had one hell of a 2019 as an industry, right? I think best year ever was thrown around quite a few times. We had one hell of a 2020, worst year ever, probably was thrown around just as much. And now as we're coming into 2021, I really only want to spend a short minute or two on COVID and get more into what's going to drive what we see as the rebound. But Marc, what do you see right now? What does it look like to you? Are we kind of coming back, sort of? Where are we now versus end of the year? Would love your thoughts just to sort of level set the conversation.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. I don't want to dwell too much on what has been, but just thinking about where I was a year ago and the conversations we were having about out of home, there was real excitement about where the industry's going. I think we were on the back of 35 growth quarters, consecutive growth quarters, the biggest year-on-year increase in a Q4 since pre-recession times. And then COVID hit and it kind of all halted to a screech. So don't want to dwell on that, but we're seeing it pick up. I think the one thing that I've noticed about the industry that makes me really proud is that we were able to adapt and really drive positive change across the industry in the last 6 to 9 months. From GeoPath updating their dashboards and allowing us to look at impressions data versus pre-COVID levels, tapping into our location data partners to understand how traffic flow is in certain environments and things like that. That's really enabled us to kind of put the work in and set us up for a good 2021. And I'm pleased to say that right now, it's not back to where it was, but I think we're almost there. And I think over the next months, hopefully with the vaccine rollout, Q2, Q3 should hopefully return to some semblance of normal in terms of billings and activity from clients. I think you're on mute there, Michael.
Yep. See, it's 2020 just keeps going. When you saw obviously lots of budgets got cut last year. When you look forward to this year, right? So we're out of stay at home. In fact, in a lot of markets, it's as though nothing's ever happened. Other markets, we know city centers are down, which is where a lot of clients usually would spend, but there are ways to move past that. Do you see it this year as, are clients talking about they are still hesitant because of COVID, or are clients back and where they don't have budgets is maybe their industry was hit harder? They're still coming back. They're still working their way through. Like, is anyone really still, it sounds silly to say, is anyone still concerned about COVID, but from an out-of-home advertising standpoint, is that still a top conversation that's going on?
Yeah, I think they are. And, you know, we will be naive to think that if it wasn't that way. I think in particular right now, bricks and mortar retail are probably the most nervous, as you see people out less and maybe shopping less, reluctant to go inside in certain markets where the figures aren't looking good. But on the flip side of that, we work with a number of other brands across multiple verticals. D2C brands specifically seem to be weathering the storm, at least the ones we work with a lot better. You know, we work with food delivery apps who have actually benefited from the lockdowns and everything. And, you know, we've seen a lot of engagement from them. So it really is a mixed bag. I would say, by and large, the majority of folks are starting to feel more comfortable talking about out of home. Maybe not necessarily the first half of the year. Most of the conversations are for the back half of the year, with the expectation that things will return to normal. But it really is a mixed bag.
That's it. So before we jump more into 2021, I actually want to go back to 2019 and even 2020 in terms of the out-of-home industry was on a roll. I think you said, was it 35 consecutive quarters of growth, which is an amazing number, before we ran into that hell of a brick wall. But from what drove that growth, what is it that you see continuing now? So before we just get into, okay, well, this and that changed from COVID, so now we can say we're back. What was really encouraging before that either we've built upon in the last year, sort of maybe quietly in stealth mode while there wasn't a lot of spend going on, or what things do you think we've got as foundational elements for our industry that will help us drive forward?
Yeah, I think there's one big one that I always come back to when I'm speaking to clients, and it's that historically out of home was seen as kind of a one-trick pony that delivers, you know, quick reach, great at building brand awareness, but doesn't necessarily deliver on lower funnel objectives. And I think what we've seen is that flip on its head a little bit, and out of home can now deliver on some of the certainly the mid funnel objectives, but some the lower funnel objectives as well. And that's just all based on the data that we've got available to us now. You know, we talk about data every day, whether it's the use of data to create more meaningful audiences based on behavior instead of demographics and things like that. If it's using that data to identify the locations that best suit that audience, or if it's the data to measure the success. You know, everyone's aware now that we can get access to exposed devices for out-of-home campaigns, and we can now track consumer actions. And I think that's a big part of it. You know, it still might be a relatively small part of the out-of-home pie, but I think people are thinking about out-of-home differently. Digital and data technology is a big part of that. But ultimately, you know, it's not an awareness driver anymore. It can do that, but it can also deliver on multiple objectives for various different verticals. And I think the D2C industry certainly has really benefited from that. We've seen an influx of advertisers into the out-of-home space who are selling direct to consumers, and they've seen genuine uplifts in sales when they advertise in the out-of-home space.
I've had a few conversations along those lines, speaking of what we've called connected out-of-home, the idea that you don't have to be a digital screen. Even the static units, we have audience data around. We can apply the same sort of knowledge. We can put smarter creative together. We can measure in the ways that you were talking about to show that lower funnel impact. And it feels so important because for years and years, even while out of home was growing, if out of home was growing as top of funnel, quite frankly, we were going to be the 4% channel forever and ever. That wasn't changing because what out of home at least could be proved to do wasn't changing. And now, to your exact point, we've got audience data, we have measurement capability. The idea that out of home can be measured as part of an omni-channel plan is such a huge step that is the thing, hopefully, that I agree with you, I think will help us drive forward, and do so in ways that we haven't seen before. And really, if you could sort of expand on how you see this working in two ways. One, for existing advertisers who always seem to be fine with sort of the upper funnel approach. And then two, as a way to bring new advertisers into the space.
Yeah, I mean, it's an education piece. It really is. For existing advertisers who see out of home as an awareness play, it's all about letting them know what they can actually do. I think the number of times I have conversations with clients who just aren't aware of what can be done now in terms of data, in terms of measurement. So really, it's just an education job with them. And I think for a lot of the other brands who weren't necessarily involved with out of home or spending in out of home before, it's really letting them know that the route to entry now is that there are multiple routes to entry. You're not just coming in just to run an awareness campaign. Actually, if you do run with small budgets, you can tap into programmatic and buy specific locations and specific moments just for your audience, that's specific for your audience. So it's just, again, making sure that out of home is not being marketed as this one trick pony, and marketers understand exactly what can be done. And that's the job of all of us, really, to get out there and to feed them that information.
And potentially loaded question, how is the story received? I think a lot of times, and I'll share my experience before asking for yours, it's a great story, but it requires work. And a lot of times that there's a level of inertia from whether it's agency partners, whether it's clients, whoever it might be, to actually put in the work to start linking us up to what they've been measuring all along, to aligning the same audiences that they use, to actually looking at out of home as an omni-channel element, to frankly changing how we look at mixed media modeling. All of these things are now going to require a lot of work. So when you have these conversations, I'm sure to some degree it's received incredibly well. What then? Who's willing to put in that work, or what have you found when it's time for that to see what happens?
Yes, it's a mixed bag. It really is a mixed bag. Some clients are just happy with the way things are, and some clients really want to push the boundaries and understand what could be. I think the education piece is probably the first step with that, as you say. The second part of that is actually doing it. We try and kind of spoon feed that information to clients and not to, condescend them in any way, but they don't understand what can be done in out of home and how simple it can be. And we're quite lucky within my team. We have a data and insights team that help us with those conversations and break it down into bite-sized information to do that. Sometimes it's successful. We work with a food delivery company based out of Chicago, but heavily investing in New York. They really, really tap into, you can guess who it is. They really, really heavily tap into the measurement piece. Because they're a digital, they were born in the digital world. It's all about attribution for them. And whilst out of home can't necessarily deliver that one-to-one attribution, even if we can capture 10% of that audience and understand what they're doing after, whether they're buying products within the website or the app, or searching for various products, that is a win for them. It's something that out of home could never do. So really, for us, and I think a really important thing for the industry is building case studies. This is still relatively new. Not a lot of folks are doing it. The more case studies and the more use cases we have, the easier it's going to be to sell in and show clients really how amazing it can be.
I think you nailed it. It's proving it out over and over again to make it a worthwhile piece. You've touched on programmatic. You've talked about audience. I want to pivot a little bit, still dealing with tech, but potentially to the creative side of out of home. One of the other challenges that at least I've seen to growth is, and I will compare it to digital, where the idea of a personalized ad is is what you do. I will sort of, without calling out campaigns, call out the point that creating customized advertising or customized creative in out of home often seems like we are asking to move mountains, which is kind of interesting when you hear and look at who, talks about, when you see the amazing creative directors that talk about the power of out of home as a huge canvas. And yet it seems really hard to get contextually appropriate creative for our channel in a way that you do in all these other platforms and all these other channels. So how do you see, either does technology keep simplifying this and making it easier as we go along? Does this become something that we have to still see as a hurdle? Where does that go in terms of adapting how comfortable people are with using out of home?
I think you're right. I think it's, we've all seen certain pieces of out-of-home creative in the past and been frustrated that it wasn't made better. I think context is key, contextual relevance, especially now coming off the back of COVID, where advertisers want to pivot very, very quickly and need to adapt their messaging. And the fact that DCO, digital creative optimization, is just a given in other digital channels, it should be given in out of home as well, in digital out of home as well. The screens have the capability to run specific content by location, by time of day. You can tap into various weather triggers as well. We have a platform internally that can do this, and it plugs directly into the vendor screens. So it's becoming easier. It's still massively underutilized. I think the latest stat that I saw was less than 10% of digital out-of-home campaigns run any kind of contextual relevance, which is insane. Can you imagine the same in online, in the online world? Only 10% of the ads. And yes, again, there's one-to-one data that's kind of pinning you to that particular ad. Out-of-home's not one-to-one, but you can definitely tailor the creative based on the audience that's likely to be in front of the screen. And also based on the physical context as well, running a different ad on the subway versus, on a billboard or a bulletin, it just makes complete sense. So again, education. We tackle this in a number of ways. We speak to clients about it and we come up with specific ideas, but we also have an approach to creative agencies as well. So we reach out to those guys, talk about the platform that we have and how easy it is to deliver. Quite often we get pushback because creative agencies get quite precious about their creative, and we kind of say, well, look, we're not taking the work away from you. You're still creating the ads. We're just allowing you to adapt it in real time with the platform that then pushes out the content. So yeah, it's frustrating, but we're really excited about it. Again, I think interest post-COVID has been a lot more, has been a lot greater in this, as it has been with programmatic. So I think you're only going to see that grow in 2021 and beyond.
That's fantastic. I think Steven's jumping back on. Yep.
Yeah, I want to squeeze in a couple of questions for both of you, by the way. Since I'm sorry that we lost Jill to technical glitches. I think her power was or her connection was really sketchy. But to both of you, I want we have some questions to go a little bit more concrete. You both have mentioned measurement. What are the specific measurement tools that you are finding right now most valuable or most promising when it comes to out of home? What are the ones that are really driving interest and greater certainty that you see are going to be most important this year?
I can go first. Historically, out of home has been the awareness channel. Brand lift studies were coming out of our ears, but we've got that data now. We know it works. We know that out of home campaigns increase recall and drive awareness. I think what clients are really interested in now is tangible results. So concrete actions, things like visit to web, physical foot traffic uplift in bricks and mortar stores, orders, sales data, all the kinds of stuff that we probably couldn't get hold of even 5 years ago is now readily available with location data and various other partners we work with. And it enables us to tie out of home back to specific actions and specific sales. We just couldn't do it before. And now it's just really exciting that we can. So just being able to do that means that we're on an equal playing field with other digital channels.
Yep. And I'll build on it. I think your point is exactly right. Business outcomes are essentially what should be the be all end all. So sales, 100%. We've done it. We've proven we can do it. Customer acquisition, done it, proven we can do it. Opening bank accounts, done it, proven we can do it, right? It's a business outcome that matters, but I think there's two other areas as well. One is media synergies, right? We've proven sort of informally and anecdotally through case studies, when you add out of home to television, your TV performance numbers go up on whatever you're measuring with TV. We've done the same with mobile and other digital channels where we've seen display, video, search, and social all have better response rates, whether it's click through, view through, whatever it might be, when you incorporate out of home as a priming element and really use the power that we bring from the channel. I think the third, and this is where we have a lot of work to do, out of home is an ignored part of media mix models. And the reality is, until that part is addressed, and it's not just looked at as, does a billboard have an impact in its own zip code? When quite frankly, it was targeting people moving from point A to point B, not people smack right there. We've got to get past that and some of the other challenges, or else we're still going to have to keep building up these caseloads of case studies and run into that same wall. So I think those are three areas of whether it's attribution or measurement or modeling that need to be touched on.
I want to do a quick sort of reporter's follow-up on that, on that question of location tracking. And how dependent is out-of-home measurement on that cell phone and tagging and tracking, and how much will some of the death of the cookie and the app ID impact that measurement method?
I think from what I've looked at in terms of how we plan and use audience for planning, I will be okay, right? We're not looking at a one-to-one find. It's who is the general audience in view of that unit. So from a planning standpoint, we're going to be pretty fine. I'm confident in that. On measurement, we will see a hit, right? You're not going to get as many IDs passed back. That's just what it is. But I think what we've seen from our counterparts in Europe with GDPR, what we saw in the earliest days of CCPA, frankly, even if we lost 20 some odd % of signals, I think we'd be okay for most measurement. It just becomes a question of how do you scale your campaign to get enough of a sample size that you're looking at statistical significance.
Okay. Mark?
And I agree. I think we may see some reduction in the match rates and the ability to pick up some of the device IDs. Do I think it's going to make much of a difference? Probably not anytime in the near future.
And then finally, what is the out-of-home platform or the out-of-home technology or placement type to watch for the next year? What do you think? Where do you think as we start moving back to normality, we're going to see some of the greatest growth in terms of exposures or screens out of home?
Good question. I'll let you take that, Michael, first, and then I'll have a think.
Thanks. I'm going to go back to where you actually started the conversation. And I think it's as a combination of flexibility, but also all the audience data and the measurement baked in and everything that people are used to getting out of programmatic buying. The idea, what I'll tack onto all that, because all those things are great, the ability to go programmatic is the ability to go national. Out of home has not been thought of as a national channel ever. We're what you do in a handful of key markets. Even those advertisers who go 200 markets deep are planning market by market. We now have the ability to bring national scale across screens to advertisers who frankly never thought of us as a viable option. And I think that's the biggest door opener, is now we're getting out of great, I can run your top 10 markets, and we're getting into, I can reach your national audience in a way that you never thought about before.
Yeah, and now I've had time to think about it. I can say that I agree with Michael on that, just in terms of the programmatic element. I think it's going to see huge growth. And like you say, it's almost going to democratize out of home and location a little bit and allow people an entry point where there probably wasn't one before. I'm really interested to see the what the permanent effect of COVID and the hangover from COVID has on journeys and people's ability to move around. So I think right now everyone's talking about roadside and you know, transit has taken a hit, but actually we're seeing new formats pop up that are taking advantage, you know, office screens and things like that. So kind of a broad answer, but just excited to see where it's going. You know, there are going to be new opportunities come up. It's what we do. We adapt as an industry, and the ability to buy across multiple screens and multiple environments programmatically is going to open up new revenue streams.
Marc, yeah.
Steve, before you let them go, I have to jump in because I did this case study for, I don't know if I can say the brand, but anyway, and it amazed me and getting into line with what you were saying, Marc, as far as you're finding new places, and they did it on taxis, and it was digital on taxis, and they tracked by phones and they had other data sources. Their uplift in their store was amazing. They were able to turn it on and turn it off. I mean, tell me about that kind of technology. Are we seeing more of that? And is that what you were bringing up, that we're going to see more opportunities?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, actually, because we've been talking about this quite a bit. You can't just measure, or the measurement piece isn't just with static units. You can actually measure moving media now, which is a complete game change.
Mm-hmm.
You can tie everything together. You can look at transit routes. You can look at taxis. And I think you're going to see more of it. You really are. The measurement piece in general is super exciting. I think it's probably one of the most exciting parts about our industry for me, is that we're just scratching the surface, and we're going to be, like I say, on an equal playing field with some of those other digital channels. So I think you're going to see much more of it.
Yeah, and they were able to turn off, like they track their audience. And so say the cab goes somewhere where that audience isn't, then they have it turned off. So it was much more efficient. And I just thought it was incredible. And they could change the screen as they wanted to, maybe a different color at night. And it was just really amazing, I thought.
Michael, Kinetic did this, right? Not necessarily the campaign that Lisa's talking about, but you guys have done taxi tops with GPS tracking into creative, right?
Absolutely. This what you're describing to me is really the new table stakes. If you have a screen and you can't plug in and you can't apply audience and you can't build in dynamic creative capabilities and you can't measure against it, you're behind now, and you're hurting the industry by virtue of being behind because you haven't applied all of these aspects to it. And it's whether it's a moving unit, whether it's stationary, whether it's digital, whether it's static, to the extent possible, you have to bring all of this forward. This is what we need as a business and as an industry to grow and to keep telling a compelling story. The alternative is, and I don't say it dismissively, we do big and pretty really well as an industry, but then we'll sell big and pretty for the next 100 years and won't grow. So we've sold it for 100 years. Now we have something that helps us advance it even further. Let's take advantage of that.
Michael and Marc, thank you so much. I really appreciate you championing through the tech glitches. Thanks. You're great sports.
Thank you.
Thank you. And shout out to Jill. Thank you for the effort.
I'm sorry we lost Jill, but we'll bring her back next time.
Definitely.
All right. Thanks, guys. Goodbye.
Guys.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.